Now to West Asia, where Israel is in the grip of its worst domestic crisis. People are out on the streets by the thousands. It's the 27th week of protests. There is growing anger, and it's against Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister. Netanyahu wants to change the way the judiciary works. So he introduced judicial reforms. And that's what led to the protests in the first place. They started at the beginning of this year. Now we are in the month of July, nearly halfway through, and the protests in Israel are still on. Today, they had a high-profile addition. The police chief of Tel Aviv has resigned.
Unfortunately, for the first time in 3 decades of service, I encountered an absurd reality in which ensuring calm and order was not what was required of me, but precisely the opposite.
And why did he quit? Because of government meddling. He did not name anyone, but he said they wanted him to use excessive force against protesters, and that's something that he refused to do.
I could not meet the expectations of the ministerial echelon, which included breaking the rules, procedures, organizational order, and blatant interference in decision-making and operational discretion.
So no names, but no prizes for guessing who he was talking about. This man, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he's the National Security Minister. He's a hardliner. In the past, he's been convicted for incitement. Ben-Gvir joined Netanyahu's new coalition in the month of December. It was a move that alarmed many. When elected, Ben-Gvir wanted more control over the police. In March this year, he demanded tough action against the protesters. And now the police chief has resigned. Thousands took to the streets. They lit fires on a Tel Aviv highway.
I'm here today because I'm an Israeli who cares about democracy. I know that if the government decided to fire the head police officer of Tel Aviv only because he decided that it's legal to protest, I think this is one step further for Israel to be a non-democratic state.
Today is a special night because apparently the Minister of National Security, Homeland Security, whatever, fired the Chief of Tel Aviv Police for refusing to make sure that after every demonstration, the local main hospital is full of injured demonstrators. He refused to do that and got fired over the phone.
So what are these people angry about? Judicial reforms. Netanyahu thinks the courts in Israel are too powerful, so he wants to curb their powers. But critics say he's only trying to weaken the judiciary. And this is what the plan is. The parliament would be able to overturn court decisions. All you need is a simple majority in the Knesset. That's the Israeli parliament. And you can overturn a court order with a majority. Plus, the government will have a say in the appointment of judges. Why is that problematic? The government does appoint judges in other countries, like in the US. You see, Prime Minister Netanyahu faces court cases. He's on trial for corruption. And so this so-called reform could help him personally. The government can potentially manipulate the judicial system in Israel, which is why the people are upset. They're calling it an assault on democracy. So for the last 27 weeks, they've been protesting. The government remained adamant for a long time, but last week, it offered a concession. Netanyahu dropped a key part of his plan. The part that said that the parliament can overturn court decisions, that has been removed. But it doesn't really help him. In fact, it puts him in an even more precarious position. And I'll explain why. Netanyahu won the last election, but he did not win a simple majority. Fun fact, no party in Israel has won a simple majority ever. They've always had a coalition government. But this one is a particularly messy coalition. Netanyahu is a right-wing leader. He had to rely on what's called the far right to get the numbers. They joined on one condition: implement judicial reform, reign in the courts. That's what they wanted. So that's what he tried to do. Now he's backtracking and they're angry. They think the Prime Minister is surrendering to the protesters. So the allies are upset. At the same time, the people are also upset. They want the entire reform chucked out. Benjamin Netanyahu is caught between a rock and a hard place. He can't ditch the far right. They're the ones holding his government together. Any more missteps and the House of Cards will collapse. It could trigger Israel's 6th election in 4 years. On the other hand, he can't stop the protests. His Western allies are already calling him out, even his staunchest ally, the United States. It's unhappy. A raid in Jenin may have dominated the headlines for a few days, but he can't make the protests go away. Does this mean the end of the road for Netanyahu? Well, that's what many think. But remember, he's been Prime Minister for a long time. He's a shrewd politician, the proverbial cat with 9 lives. He's made comebacks before. The road ahead for him winds uphill, but it's definitely not the end yet.